So tonight I gained a little bit of courage and I had a conversation with my oldest son. And the conversation was in regards to basically his treatment, the way he treats his little brother. Um, I just finally reached a point where I couldn't take it anymore and um my feelings have been hurt enough. The baby's a baby. He doesn't understand, but I do. Um, so for an example, the oldest, since the baby was born, he never really seemed to interact too much with him. He never really seemed to just take to him. Um, but fast forward, the baby's now walking and, he's just doing more now. So he's starting to, not starting to, but he recognizes his brother. He anticipates him coming home. He hears him putting the key in the door and coming in, and he's waiting for him at the top of the steps now. And just recently, he started crying when his brother would leave. But the things that Jermaine was doing was he'd come in the house, not even acknowledge the baby. Definitely didn't acknowledge me. He'd come in the house and he'd never speak to the baby. Like, he could be in the house all day long and don't say anything to the baby. Don't come play with the baby. Don't come say hi. He'd walk right by him. He slams doors behind the baby. He just walks away from him and he'll go into his room and slam the door behind him, knowing the baby's right behind him. And though, my heart was just breaking. Like, I'm just, it's one thing to treat me a certain way, but why are we doing this to the baby? Like, the baby is innocent and he doesn't understand anything. And I don't know. So I had a conversation with him tonight, and his response is just even more disturbing. I brought all this to his attention, which is not the first time. Of course, he denies how often he speaks to the baby when he comes in, and he thinks he thinks that it's a lot more often that he actually interacts and speaks to him than it actually is. Because he doesn't. He's very sometiming. You just never know what to expect when Jermaine comes home. Sometimes he says hi to the baby. Sometimes he walks right by him. Or, I'm sorry, most times he walks right by him. On the days that he does speak to him and he seems like he wants to interact with him, it melts my heart. But anyway, I brought all this to his attention today, and he doesn't even my little brother. He doesn't say that. He says, your child. He's the baby. He refers to the baby as your child talking to me. Not my little brother, not nothing, just your child. And he doesn't fail to remind me that that's not his child. We know it's not your child. I don't know what makes him think that I want him to believe it's his child. I don't know. But his response was to all of this that I brought up. First of all, he denies how often he's distant with the baby. But that's just, I don't know, Jermaine be in his own little world. So he doesn't know how often, he doesn't realize a lot of things because he's just not, he doesn't really seem to be here. He's just always somewhere else in his mind. But he says that he's been saying that when he gets a little older, and he'll take him places more, like when he can sit in a car with a seatbelt. He can go more places with his brother. He also reminded me again that he's not his dad, and that he can choose to basically be a big brother. He can choose when he wants to play with him or talk to him. He can choose it not to. And that is so disturbing to me. Like, I don't understand how you have a sibling. I don't give a fuck what your age is because they are 18 years apart. But how do you just choose when you want to be responsible? Because ultimately, when you're a sibling, you have a responsibility, you have an obligation to your younger siblings. You're supposed to love them and take on that responsibility. Like, usually that is just second nature to anybody, right? Like, usually, typically, human beings just take on the responsibility of their siblings because they love them. And that's their little brother, their little sister. I've never known any, like, I just don't understand. I just don't understand my house. I don't understand the relationship that I have in my house. I truly do not. Because that is just so disturbing to me, to think that you can ignore your little brother until you don't feel like ignoring him. Instead of being the big brother that gives him that male energy that you know he doesn't have, or the big brother that just loves his little brother and is happy to see him when he comes home, or even the understanding that you don't slam a door in the child's face. Like, put yourself in that child's shoes, and how would you feel if someone that you looked up to just slammed doors in your face all day? He just doesn't have the ability to even consider how somebody else feels, or to empathize with the needs of anybody else. It's all about him, how he feels, what he wants, what he doesn't want. But here's my theory. He's acting like a child, and as much as he wants to be perceived as this adult, this grown person, he's really just a child, because responsibility requires change. And I think it's very clear that Jermaine doesn't want to change. He grew up an only child. He's used to his space being his, and me and him, we're usually not in each other's spaces. Like, it was just the two of us. So he would be in his space, I'd be in mine. We really didn't have to. We didn't really get in each other's way. But being a big brother and having the little brother who always wants to be around you and wants to be in your space and wants to be near you and, cries for you when you leave and is happy to see you when you come, it requires him to change. It requires him to put a smile on his face when he doesn't usually smile. It requires him to put the phone down, or come out of his room, or just give the baby attention that is not on something he wants to do right now, but to focus on what the baby needs right now. And he wants to play. He wants that attention. It requires him to change, and he just doesn't want to change. He wants to be who he is, and that's why he wants to deal with his brother when he feels like dealing with his brother. Because today, if I don't feel like, or I will say, because it's like this week, if I don't feel like dealing with the baby, I'm just not. Whereas somebody that takes on that responsibility, and understands the obligation that they have to somebody smaller than them, they understand that, yeah, I'm getting off work, I'm tired, but I know I'm about to go in this house. This baby's going to be in my face, so let me just give him 10 minutes of my time and play with him and da-da-da-da, and then I'm going to just go up in my room and go to sleep. He doesn't think like that. He comes in the house and he walks right past the both of us. Most days he comes in the house and he just doesn't even speak. He doesn't even look our way. And of course the baby runs out and he's following behind him. And that's when doors get slammed in his face. He gets shut out the kitchen. And Jermaine sits with his headphones on. He sits in the kitchen for hours doing whatever he's doing. And he just doesn't interact with him at all. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that because I just don't understand. I just don't understand. Like, I just don't understand. It's like he just does his best to distance himself from me and that baby. And I think a lot of it has to do with responsibility. It forces you to change. So when you can ignore your mom and your mom's suffering, regardless of whose fault it is, because that's where his argument is. It's not my child, it's not my fault. You're right, it's not. But I'm your mom. I'm also the only motherfucker in your life who has never given up on you, never left you, and never looked at you like you were a choice. Never, not once. And the obligation to me as just your mom to want to help me, want to give me a little break, maybe so I can use the bathroom or take a shower. Just want to help out a little bit in that way will cause him to change. I think it will also I don't know, like it gets really deep. It just gets really deep, like, because he's just so used to thinking like the way that his dad thinks. It's always about blame. It's always about whose fault something is. And like I told him today, like it's not. There is no blame. There is no fault. Justice came when he came. Jermaine always wanted a little sibling, and when he found out it was a boy, he was ecstatic. He was ecstatic. But then he came, and the energy was just gone. He didn't want to need to go on. Because having a sibling and having a baby in the house is responsibility that comes with that. It forces you to change. It forces you to change. Love forces you to change. When you care about somebody, it forces you to change. It forces you to change. You can't be the same. You cannot be the same person that you once were when you love someone or when you care about somebody. Like, it forces you to change, and I just don't think that he feels like he has a choice as to when he changes and when he doesn't. And technically he does. But what kind of relationship are we going to have after all this? Because I have to look at you now as somebody who's willing to watch me struggle. And what about Justice? Justice is going to grow up without you, without knowing you for real, until you decide that, he can sit in a seatbelt and hang out with me. And you just ruining relationships. Like, people, we need each other. But, Jermaine doesn't need us. We're probably in his way. So that's how he treats us. And it's really heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. And I really, 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 really try to understand my son's perspective. A baby, Justice, I wasn't prepared for Justice. And, but he's here. There's nothing we could do about that. Like, he's here. Like, are we going to just live with regret until we don't feel like living with regret anymore? I don't know. Like, he's here. I wasn't prepared for Jermaine when he came either. I was just a kid. Literally, just a kid. But I don't know. I just feel like when it comes to family and it comes to people who you care about and who you're supposed to love, and when it cares about loyalty and who's been there for you, who's had your back and has never left you, and then that person, maybe you can call it a mistake, but that person, got themselves in some shit, and your best move is to move on. Like, you don't even see them. And what happens when the tables turn? What happens when the tables turn? Because I'm not the type of person that stays down. I'm doing what I have to do because I have a baby. But I'm not the type of person that stays down. Jermaine will always be my son. But I tell you one thing. Going through this alone the way I am and feeling the way that Jermaine makes me feel most of the time, it just doesn't, I don't really see like how to come out of this stronger. Just feel like we'll just be more separated. Like we're not gonna get stronger. I don't know. I don't know. I just wish things were. I just wish that I had a child that was loyal to me the way I was loyal to them. I wish that I had a child that didn't look for fault all the time and actually tried to understand. And I just don't think he does.